A few miles from Boston, in Massachusetts, there is a deep inlet winding into a thickly wooded swamp. Legend has it that there is a great treasure buried by Kidd the pirate under a large tree in the swamp that is looked after by the devil himself. This, of course, is well known, as the devil always looks after treasure that is ill-gotten. About the year 1727, there lived a meager, miserly fellow by the name of Tom Walker. He lived with his miserly wife, who was tall, fierce of temper, loud of tongue, and strong of arm. They often could be heard yelling and fighting with one another, and Tom's face often showed signs of their conflict. One day, as Tom was walking home, he took what he thought would be a shortcut through the swamp, but it was an ill-chosen route. The swamp was thickly grown with great, gloomy pines and hemlocks, and it was full of pits and quagmires. Tom walked until he reached the old Indian fort, and he sat down on a fallen tree to rest.
What are you doing on my grounds, boy?
Your grounds? No more your grounds than mine. They belong to Deacon Peabody.
Deacon Peabody's a sinner who looks more to other people's sins than his own. He is ready for burning.
The devil then explained how he chopped down trees with the names of prominent sinners on them and used them as firewood, which represented their death and ultimately their eternity in hell.
And pray, who are you, if I may be so bold?
You see, that is a mystery in itself, because I go by various names. I'm the wild huntsman, the black miner, the black woodsman. I'm the great prompter of slave dealers and the grand master of the Salem witches.
Now, most people would have been scared out of their minds at this encounter, but Tom was so used to dealing with his wife that he did not even fear the devil. After a long conversation, the devil offered Tom a deal: Tom's soul for the treasure of the swamp.
And what proof have I that everything you've been telling me's true?
There is my signature.
And with that, the devil pressed his thumb upon Tom's forehead, leaving a mark that could not be removed. Tom returned home, and the first thing his wife told him was that Deacon Peabody had died. This confirmed the identity of the black man in the forest. Tom told his wife of everything that happened, and she insisted that Tom comply with the devil's terms so that they would be wealthy for life. But Tom was not willing to sell his soul to please her. But, being the greedy person that she was, his wife decided to make the deal with the devil herself. The very next evening, she set off for the swamp, with her apron heavily laden with all their family's valuables. Tom waited for several days, but she never returned. No one knows for sure what happened to Tom's wife, but the most probable story is that she attempted to deal with the devil as she had been accustomed to deal with her husband. But though a female scold is generally considered a match for the devil, in this instance, it was not. When Tom went to look for his wife, he spent many hours on the search until his attention was drawn to his wife's apron that was tied up in a tree. He hoped that it would hold the valuables she took, but instead all he found was her heart and liver. Tom consoled himself for the loss of his property with the loss of his wife. He even felt gratitude to the woodsman, for he had done Tom a kindness in killing off his wife. Because of this, Tom sought to get better acquainted with the Black Woodsman. However, the devil knows how to play his cards right, and he delayed meeting Tom until the man was prepared to agree to anything. They finally met once again in the woods and finally worked out the conditions of the deal. The devil suggested becoming a slave trader, but Tom refused and instead suggested becoming a usurer. This suited the devil just fine, and soon the deal had been made. Tom returned to Boston and soon became one of the most well-known usurers around. Tom would act as a universal friend to the needy, lending money, but when times got tough, he would show no mercy. Thus, he made an abundance of wealth very quickly. He built himself a huge house and furnished himself a beautiful carriage, but the inside of the house was empty. As Tom got older, he began to feel anxious about the deal he had made and the consequences it would have on the next life. He became a violent churchgoer, where he would pray loudly and strenuously to the point where the quiet Christians around him would grow quite uncomfortable with his fervor. However, his lifestyle as a usurer did not change. One day, Tom found himself in his office with one of his friends, who was begging him to grant just a few more months to pay what he owed.
My family will be ruined.
Charity begins at home. I must take care of myself in these hard times.
But you have made so much money off of me.
The devil take me if I've made a farthing.
And with that, Tom heard 3 loud knocks at the door. He went to see who it was, and there stood the devil himself.
Hello, boy. It's time.
Tom was whisked away on a black horse through the streets and into the woods, where he was never heard from again. The very next day, Tom's house caught fire and burned to the ground. All of his bonds and mortgages were reduced to cinders. This was the untimely end of Tom Walker and his wealth. Matthew 6:19-21 says, "Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." This was the problem with Tom Walker and his wife. They were both driven by greed in everything that they did, and the consequences for their greed in both instances led to death. We can learn from this by not holding on to the things of this life, but instead storing up treasure in heaven, where we will one day spend eternity by God's grace.